I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Debbie Hibb, the Diplomat Director, Alex Graves. Alex, the jaw-dropping season 2 finale of The Diplomat Dreadnought is so damn good. Take me back to your first reaction to how the episode unfolds, and then also this subsequent table read, how those big twists and reveals went down with the cast.
I was asked if I would call Allison Janney, who I worked with on West Wing, see if she'd be on the show. And I called her, and we had a great conversation. And she had worked with Deborah as well, and who's the showrunner, and said it'd be great, and decided she'd come on the show. And we were talking about the fact that she would be the mythically dysfunctional vice president who's mentioned in the pilot of the show. And we got into a conversation about, wouldn't it be crazy if she was very problematic, meaning Allison's character, and if the last moment of the season finale was the president died, which would mean she'd become president. And I think Deborah's response was, "That's a great fucking idea." And but no one, as with every script on the show, you kind of can't really quantify how good the script's going to be until Deborah writes it, and then you get the dialogue and the story and the way it's put together, and it's each script really is a marvel. They're just some of the best writing I've ever seen, and I'm sure we'll ever see. And so then you start to just say, don't blow it. The pressure's huge, and you want to set it up and pace it and stage it and photograph it and do everything, and do your due diligence and make it as great as you can. And so it was a joy to get the script. It's was incredible to work with Allison again, and it was really fun to play that twist.
And then what was everyone's reaction to like to what actually happens at the end? I am still in shock.
Yeah, what was really fun is we kept it from everybody. We had a redacted script page, and no one knew what the ending was until the cast read through. And at the cast read through, we had the real scripts handed out, and just said, "Don't, everybody stick to the plan, and we'll read through it." And we read through it, and Otto, who plays Stewart, stood up and yelled "what the fuck" and threw his script across the room, and everybody was screaming and howling, and it was an absolute blast, and we knew we had something great.
See, I would live for moments like that. I just think that is gold. Just
Yeah,
to see visceral, real reactions from people. And then the audience is going to be feeling the same. So
yeah,
yeah, the pressure's on for Alex Graves. But you've been on some of the most incredible shows ever made for people like Aaron Sorkin and David E. Kelly. And now you got Deborah Kahn, who is an incredible writer. And I just then really curious to know how the scene at the end, when all we are seeing is the Secret Service running towards Penn.
mhm.
She's the villain now. She's the president. This the way that whole sequence is framed, blocked, and shot. It could have been in so many different ways. So talk me through the choices made to make that moment so memorable.
Well, it's the choice to go operatic. It's funny. What Diplomat has in common with my background, it has a lot in common with West Wing. It has a lot in common, oddly, with Game of Thrones. And what it has in common is you want the audience, if they're not sure what's going on, they know what's going on. And there's an unraveling of intrigue, and building that is really fun, and it's very fun filmically. And so I decided, we would be doing larger shots. We were doing drones coming down on them, and which we wouldn't normally do. And we opened it up, and it really started with, we were talking to Secret Service um, consultants about what would happen, because a vice president getting this news about the president in a foreign country, what would happen, what are the protocols, because they have protocols for everything, and even this was murky for them. And I said, how many agents would you have? And they said, we'd have five or six agents generally. And I turned to Deborah and I just said 20. And and it was one of the rare cases where we kind of went bigger than what would normally happen to dramatize it, because being familiar with the location, I just thought if you saw that many agents running down the hill, it would be scary, and
Yeah.
you would wonder what was going on, and Kate and Grace would wonder what was going on. And I'm my big mantra is I'm always in Kate's point of view, and how do I present her point of view. So even if it was 6, it felt like 20 to Kate coming down the hill.
Yeah. And then what are the notes to Kerry and Allison as the director? You're giving them some guardrails and guidance, but of course they're such amazing actors. You could probably just let them fly, but of course you need to guide them. So what were you talking about on set to make that moment shine the way it does?
What we were talking about is it going to rain? We were in Great Britain, and whenever you're shooting outside in Great Britain, you're feeling a sprinkle, and you're worried it's going to rain on you. I didn't have to say very much, to be perfectly honest. It's there. Allison's one of the greatest actors. Carrie's one of the best actors I've ever worked with, and they're both, so already there and imaginative that I probably just said, you don't. The main thing is that they don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
That's actually, of all the things we do, one of the simpler acting moments we've had to do.
And the thing is, like after season one, the explosion, I mean that pardon the pun kind of blew my mind. And then I felt like this season, only 6 episodes. I wish it was longer, but 6 episodes. But really, I feel like you hit your stride. Like the show
Mm.
is just keeps getting better and better. And I then wonder for season three, um, is the show going to explore more about this theme of how power corrupts and is often unchecked? Because Penn is the villain now, and in the real world, sometimes bad actors, like bad people, are rewarded with even more power. We could get into that, we won't. But
Mm.
what do you feel about that? Because that's what the show is headed towards, and that is alarming, chilling, and very interesting to watch as a viewer.
You're right in what you're sensing is coming. I think, season one, as with any season one, is a huge birthing process and a very big education. And when you're lucky enough to have the support we have from Netflix, and come back and have an audience discover the show, you do hit a stride. You are more confident. It's clearer what the tone is. Tone on our show is the big thing in every scene. It's like how serious, how dramatic, how funny, how clear is the story as you're going through. And so we had I would say we had more fun, but it was also just we got better at it. And now we're in the middle of filming season 3 right now, and it's better than ever. And it is intensifying. It's becoming, as you say, I mean, we're moving towards real internal power struggles between both, everything from the nations to the marriage. A lot of big things happen that really. What I love about season 3 is you'd think it was season 1. It's so fresh and exciting to us as we're doing it. And that's just, again, a testament to Deborah and the writers just really challenging themselves with hard story instead of doing the same old thing. It keeps We keep building the mountain. There's been no let off, and we're halfway through season 3, and I was out prepping, scouting for the finale today, and I couldn't be more excited about that. And that's like a year away from you guys.
I know, this is the hard part now because now we have to wait, mate, and I
Yeah.
can't wait. I want to know now. So just tell us everything, and then we'll be okay.
Okay.
No, don't do that. You'll lose your job.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed this show, and I cannot wait for season 3. And beautiful work on the finale, especially. I was completely blown away.
Oh, thank you so much, Rob. Thanks.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Dune Prophecy Director Anna Foerster. Anna, the pilot of this show is, of course, where most of the show's world building takes place, setting the tone and setting the look and feel. So, talk us through the specific pressures of taking the reins on a series pilot where you have so much to work with and to get across to the audience.
Yeah, pressure is the right word. I mean, first of all, how exciting is the idea to be becoming part of the Dune universe on a world building level? I mean, that's pretty damn exciting to start with, but the pressure, the terrifying pressure comes like right away, because you have all this responsibility. You have the responsibility to the source material, to the fans, and also to Villeneuve's movie, who has, like, in a very beautiful way unlocked the Dune universe. So you're stepping into something, and yet you have to create something that plays at a different time, tells a completely different story, and plays on different planets. So yeah, I mean, this is exciting, but also on a, I mean, most of the heavy lifting for the a show like this will happen in the pre-production. So there is kind of this whirlwind of decision making, how to create this. And it was, you know, it's like most of this conversations about what are we building, where does visual effects step in, what can we do in camera, what is special effects helping us, where do we use resources for visual effects, do we use them for the right shots so they tell the scope, they tell the story, they make it epic, and let's not waste it in scenes where we don't need it. So there's all this decision making on a, let's say, world building technical level. And then there's all the small stuff, like, I shouldn't say small, but the non-technical stuff, so much like the costumes and like little details and little things. So yeah, it's a very exciting time.
Thing is, it's like, as a fan of Dune, the books, the original, and of course Denis Villeneuve's two incredible films, there is a lot of expectation just for me, as from my subjective point of view, and I imagine that most fans. And to see, I've seen the first two episodes and I loved them. Like, I was so invested from about the first 10 minutes. That is such an achievement, because you could have gone the other way, and that must be terrifying to live up to the expectation, but also to make something for the show that it's of your own. It doesn't have to be compared to the films. It's something that stands on its own. So that dichotomy is interesting, isn't it? I'm probably saying that you thought about.
Yeah, no,
quite a bit.
absolutely. And it was very clear to us in the very beginning, like with Allison, our showrunner, and with the rest of the team, that we do want to respect the source material very much. And we also want to make sure that we live in that same universe that Villeneuve unlocked. That said, we still tell a different story. We still live on different planets. So yeah, that choice was very clear, that we had a universe that was existing for us, but we are finding our place within it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that works really beautifully. I want to talk about some of the highlights from the pilot particularly. Actually, there's something that occurred to me about this technique that you use called animal technique, this concept where you employ on set with the actors how they should move, and which gives consistency for actors playing different versions of the same character at different ages. Can you talk me through that? Because I've never really heard of that before.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had the situation that we had two actors playing the same character, as a younger character and as an older character. And it was very important to all of us that there is a clarity about the arc, and a clarity for the actor playing the younger character where she ends up, and vice versa. So there was a lot of conversation in the beginning, how this arc develops and what the nuances are they might use to give a consistency to that performance. And the animal technique is only one piece to the puzzle. It's one tool an actor can use in this case. And this is something I was introduced to years ago through Jean-Louis Rodrigue. He's like the godfather of the animal technique, who trains that. Lots of actors are using it. And what it is essentially is the actor chooses an animal for his character. And he works with it and boils it down to the essence of the character, the essence of the animal for his character. So that is something he can fall back on. So to explain it in a simpler way, like if somebody reacts or turns to you and the essence of the character is a bird of prey, is very different than the essence would be a cat. And the interesting thing about that is that this is not cerebral. This is something that comes or ends up being on an instinctual body level if the actor has really worked with that. And for our situation, it was an idea to say, okay, so if those two actors playing the same character would agree on the same animal, on the same essence of an animal, if that gives us a through line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it does make a lot of sense, because the performances of Emily Watson, Olivia Williams, Jessica Barden, Emma Canning, there's a lot of consistency there. And I always wondered how actors did that, well, also in conjunction with the director. So that's fascinating to me. One highlight that I immediately turn to is the acolytes gathering and chanting around the vibrating water basin. It's so beautifully choreographed. You've got this, I assume, drone or some overhead shot. Talk me through that, because it just looked like a work of art.
Yeah, I'm glad it actually resonated with you, no pun intended, because it was really starting as a very simple scene. It's like some women chanting while Mother Raquela is dying and young Valia is being summoned. So there's a simplicity about the scene. And for me, it became very interesting and exciting to put the scene, to infuse the scene with all those elements, all those clues and all those symbols that actually have meaning for Dune, but also have meaning for our story, for the sisterhood. And so it started with this overhead shot. It wasn't a drone, it was actually a rigged camera. But it was the circular shot. And again, the circle and this overhead circular shot will have a continuation. It has a meaning in our story. So that was one thing. And then I had this water bowl in the middle. As we all know, for Dune, water has definitely some significance. It also has significance for our sisterhood. But the other thing was to start giving the water vibration through the voices. That was something, an idea that came because when you later look at young Valia using her voice for the first time in the courtyard, the water is rippling also. There's an effect on the water. So that was one thing to use. And we talked to the composer to give us source material of a specific rhythm for the chant, so we could practice them with the actors and with the extras. And then we incorporated the prana bindu. The prana bindu movement to it is the, let's say, Tai Chi-like movement, body work the sisters are doing to control their bodies on a cellular level. Again, that gets introduced later and has more significance later, but that was part of it. And then we wanted to do that in camera. So we created that bowl with a second floor, with a false floor, with a rubber floor, and put some lights in the bowl, because nowhere could you hide a light. It was this huge high angle. You couldn't hide anything. But essentially that bowl was sitting on a hidden loudspeaker in the middle of the room. And somebody from special effects was live playing the sounds matching with the vibration of the singing onto the bowl. So that was kind of a real fun thing to choreograph it and to plan it and to work it out. And then at the end, the water in the bowl that was used, like I call it the chant infused water, is used to soak the fabric with what the body of Dead Raquel gets wrapped.
Yes. You know, that's why it works so well. It could have just been a nothing scene, but the amount of effort and time and artistry that went into it, it's the one scene that I keep remembering because it's just so visceral and visually so beautiful. And I wish I could keep you here for 10 hours. I won't do that to you. I have lots of other things to ask you. I'll ask you another time. Thank you for your time, and congrats on some beautiful work on Dune Prophecy.
Thank you.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Fight Night, the Million Dollar Heist director, Craig Brewer. Craig, first up, can we talk about that one in episode 2, the after party heist juxtaposed with the Star Spangled Banner being performed ringside? That's an incredible achievement to get those things right, and it's such a pivotal scene. Talk me through it.
Thank you for bringing it up because it is my first.
Really?
It is my first ever like real intricate oneer like that. It's something that I'd been thinking about on the day, but it wasn't something that I had planned to where I sat down with a diagram or anything. What I started to do is I started to just rehearse each moment in them. And little by little, my cameraman, X, and my fantastic director of photography, Jody Williams, they started to kind of like glare at me a little bit. And they were like, it seems to me that the guy that's running from this sequence to the other sequence, and then this person that's going to this sequence, it just seems like that's all kind of like happening together. And little by little it started to dawn on them. It's like, are you thinking about doing this all in one continuous take? And I was like, let's not talk about that right now. Let's just keep rehearsing all the way through it. And by the time we got to like going down the staircase, it was quite obvious. They were like, you're planning on doing this in one continuous take. Then this excitement like just spread throughout the whole sound stage, and everybody was coming out of the offices, and actors who weren't even in the scene were coming out of their trailers, and everybody was gathering around the monitor as we did this. And I have to say, we only did about 3 passes on it, and I think we took the second take on it. It was one of the most exhilarating moments in my career, but I knew that we would be, you know, that the trigger for it would be the national anthem. I was obviously very inspired by 60s music and have always grown up. You know, my dad, we would clean our house on Sundays listening to the Woodstock album. So the Jimi Hendrix version of the Star Spangled Banner always felt so counterculture to me, so much like taking something familiar and just putting it on its end. And the idea that this fight is happening where they're singing the national anthem, and yet at the same time we're experiencing this radical violence, but also this greed and bedlam, you know, all to get $1 just felt I'll say it felt very American to me. and really it's one of those moments in my career that I'm very proud of, because it's just, there's nothing like those moments when you're watching them, but there's nothing like those moments for the crew putting it together, because it is undoubtedly, without a doubt, an all hands on deck moment where you cannot do it without a fantastic cameraman. You can't do it without actors hitting their mark exactly. And you can't do it without a great narrative, which we had got a great script and a great story to tell.
Yeah, the moment that the show starts in the pilot, I mean, I'm all in, and it's so beautiful to look at. It's period, and it's about an inflection point in Black culture in Atlanta. And there's so much going on with these amazing actors, but that one-up is what grabbed me by the throat. It was like, okay, this is special, and kudos to you guys, all of you, for taking that gamble. And because when it pays off, the dividends, they speak for themselves, right? It's an exciting time to be able to have that work for you, don't you think?
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, the thing that I remember talking to to Jody, my director of photography, it's like I don't want to have a oneer that smells of a oneer. I don't want to do something that makes it seem like, well, everybody's trying to do their Goodfellas shot. It
Yeah.
needed to feel like I told him, I want to get to to like a minute into it and people to go like, well, wait a minute, has this been going on this whole time? Really having the action and the narrative driving the perspective instead of trying to have it the other way, where like, oh, we're moving in one continuous take, and this will lead you to this, and this will lead you to that. When really, I just wanted to be on a freight train and have the technical aspect of it be the last thing that anybody is thinking about.
Yeah, it's a really, really heated moment, and I think it's appropriate for this heist to be done in that way, and I think that really works beautifully. Fight Night sees you reteam with some of the greatest black actors of all time: Taraji, Don, Samuel, Terrence. How does that kind of familiarity between director and actor impact a show like this?
Well, I think that was really special about this show was that it felt very familiar to everybody working on it. You know, Will Packer, the super producer on this show, has had a very long relationship with Kevin Hart, and also, you know, knows Don Cheadle, knows Taraji for a long time. But I'm in a very unique situation too, where, you know, I started my career with Terrence Howard and Taraji P. Henson. The second movie I did out of the gate was with Samuel L. Jackson. We even found Will Packer and I were passing by each other, and I heard him say, "We should get David Banner." And I said, "My David Banner?" He was like, "You're David Banner." And we started fighting over, you know, rapper actor David Banner as to who put him in a movie first. And I would like to add that it was me. But it was a family element that I felt that was happening, where all of us had you know, a little bit of a, you know, secondhand language, you know, a shorthand, excuse me. Terrence and I are brothers, where there's tremendous trust and love. And so when Will Packer called me and said, "We've got Samuel Jackson, we've got Kevin, we've got Taraji, you've got to go get your boy." And I remember calling Terrence and saying, "I really want you to be in this show. And I want to get out of your way, and I want to arm you with artists that will execute what you want." And I'll never forget him saying, like, "I want to look like a BG, and I want my hair to be like feathered back." And I was like, "I'm not even going to
Yeah.
argue with you. I'm going to just, you can do whatever you want, just like you did on Hustle and Flow." And then what happens is that everybody feels this comfort, and they bring their A game, because they're A, professionals, but B, they're genuinely engaging with talent that they don't get to work with all the time. You know, Kevin's never really done anything with Don Cheadle in a professional sense. Terrence Howard was ecstatic to be working with Samuel L. Jackson again. To see Samuel L. Jackson and Taraji P. Henson sharing a screen together is electrifying, but they know it too. And so there's really a tremendous part of my job is to just provide a platform really for great artistry to do their thing and let them feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally makes sense. Rotten Tomatoes hypes the series as skillfully weaving this inflection point in black culture into a rollicking heist story. And the raves from the critics have been really, really impressive. I wonder if it's important for a show like this to get as many eyeballs on it as possible to have the support of the critics. What does that mean to you?
Well, it was incredibly validating, especially to, you know, Shea Obama and the creators of the show, because it was a personal story for Shea. And it was a personal story, I think, for a lot of us that are, you know, filmmakers from the South. So much of what we consume in culture is not really, you know, as we grow up, you know, usually there's LA stories or New York stories. And to have a narrative that was a true story that took place in Atlanta, and also was dealing with themes that Shay and I really responded to. And what I love about it is that it really transcended race between the two of us, where we always kind of felt that there was a South versus North component to this narrative of someone like Chicken Man, who Kevin Hart plays, being thought of as country and someone who can't do things and is beneath the gangsters that are coming in from New York. And it's funny because you get someone like me and Shay, and we're just like, we have felt this in our life. Like we've been raised around that kind of feeling. And it was rare to do something that felt personal to us, still within this like electrifying crime story. And so for not only for people, especially the critics, to say that they enjoyed the movie on a narrative level in terms of like this heist and in terms of the historical context, but that they also really embraced this notion that was very important to Shay and myself about that this was a pivotal time in Atlanta. And we can look in Atlanta now and go like, well, of course it is, as Samuel L. Jackson's character calls it, a black mecca where black businesses, artistry, where movie studios and music is it's almost the capital of rap and hip hop in many regards. There was a time where that was not the case, and there was a transition into this, and it happened during this time. I'm just happy that the critics have picked up on that and the work reflected that particular element of the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I had not known that you were involved in this, I would have even thought this has got a bit of a Craig Brewer vibe to it. Like you've really built such a killer resume of period projects spotlighting Black culture, particularly as you say in the South, like Hustle and Flow and Empire and Dolomite and now this. And it's a subgenre that I feel like is really in your wheelhouse. So final question, because we've kind of run out of time, but what keeps you coming back for more? What is it about this subgenre that you love most?
I would say that there's nothing better in this world than movies and television about people who struggle and don't have much and still fight. I know that, there's a lot to point to, some of the films that I've done, and you could put it under a category, I guess, of a particular type of Black cinema, but I feel it transcends that. I think that, movies, the movie that I'm doing right now, movies like Rocky, but also, movies like Claudine. I grew up on a lot of these movies in the 80s where you rooted for people who did not that the deck was stacked against them. And I just think that is a uniquely American story. And I believe that. I've experienced it in my own life. I mean, I think that my career is what it is because I lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and I got to fight to make movies on the streets of Memphis and hang out with musicians that were working at gas stations and restaurants, and yet at the same time they were the most brilliant artists that I'd ever known. And I look at the work and the scripts that I respond to, and that's what they're treating upon, those stories. And you can look at those stories through through time, and you can see that they kind of come in waves, and for me at least, I never tire of it. I never tire of hearing about the little guy that keeps fighting, even if the audience is going, I don't think this is going to work out for him or her, and so as long as I can work with really incredible people, I don't choose to categorize it as anything other than movies where people root for the characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're really owning it. And on that note, thank you for your time and your insight, and congratulations on a really, really awesome show. I really loved it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great one.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Abbott Elementary Director Randall Einhorn. Randall, you are without a doubt the greatest of all time expert on directing mockumentary series and even documentary series after your work on Survivor, The Office, and now, of course, Abbott. What skills have you built up over the years to step in as an interviewer on a show like this and make it work so successfully?
I mean, I think for me, like the interviews in particular are something that are really fun to play with, because the way that I'll adjust a performance is through the questioning. And the way that I'll ask a question a little bit more accusatory, or in a little bit more unsettling way, or I'll say to somebody, that person was really rude to you. Talk about what that meant. Or I'll just say, how did that feel the way they talked to you? And it elicits a different performance from them. So for me, you can adjust an actor's performance by the way you're asking the question. And sometimes that comes across, I think, as a little bit subtler than just say, be angrier. I think you're angrier about this. You know what I mean? Can you come in a little hotter than that? It's just another way of eliciting a different response. And you know, when I'm interviewing somebody, I'm sitting there, I'm looking at them, and they're looking at me, and I'm hearing them, and I'm taking what they're saying. And sometimes I just sit there a little bit longer, and then they say something which is what I really want, which is, that's a very classic documentary style, is to interview somebody and just leave it blank. And then they say what you really want.
Yeah. You know what? Back in the day when I was a much, much younger guy, and I was being taught shown the ropes by the amazing Tom O'Neill, who was our founder, and he always would say, if you really want to elicit that emotion, just pause and just let it hang, because the person being interviewed will eventually speak up and fill the silence with something really, really good. Usually, it's really hard to do because you want to always be talking and filling up the space. So that is so fascinating that you're able to elicit that kind of response. Are you ever really surprised by what you get by the actors when you're doing that?
Yeah, it's really fun to play with them. I mean, you know, like on a mockumentary, I treat the cameras and as characters. So, and I talk to the cameras as characters, and the direction I'll give a camera will be something like I would give an actor. And it's really interesting how we are able to affect how an actor feels in any given moment by leaning on them with the camera, by feeling the pressure of the camera. And it really forces them into some really interesting and frankly honest places. I think it places the characters in the scene in a very real and earnest way. And I think that also elicits great, you know, earnest performances, which is key to me in comedy. I'm not a fan of a joke that I see coming, or of a joke that I see written. And it's something I always kind of prevaricate around rather than just going right to it. Because as a viewer, when I'm watching a comedy, I'm like, oh, I see the joke coming here. I see the joke, and there it is. And I don't like it. You know, so I always try to skirt around it a little bit more than than you think. It's an interesting thing.
It is, and I agree with that. I love this show's earnestness. I love sarcastic humor. I love satire. I love all that stuff. But this show can be quite earnest, and it really and I think that's the key to, but one of the keys to its success. I want to talk about the finale, season 3 finale party. I mean, you've been nominated at the Emmys before, but you were nominated for your directing on this episode. Such an achievement in this day and age with so many amazing shows out there competing for eyeballs. But it just, I think the moment in that episode that I love the most, of course, is the moment between Gregory and Janine in the dark before switching back to the chaos of the party. Talk me through how you approached the pivotal scene between these two characters that has been building for 3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, there's something I think we all have in us, that the things that you want, and then the things that you can't really go for because there's something lacking in yourself. There's a confidence. There's other stuff in the way. There's, you know, just the opportunity's not right. The timing's not right. And that's what I think I was really playing with Gregory, is he's not that confident of a person. He knows what he wants, but the situation wasn't right, and the timing wasn't right, and he thought there was another person interested in Janine. And that's something that's very, very real, I think, for anybody who's ever wanted another person. It's the opportunity needs to be right, the timing needs to be right, the moment needs to be right, and you need to say the right things and just not blow it. And so that's something that we really played with, is his struggle. I mean, in TV, one of the hardest things is in a romance is keeping people apart, and it's kind of the opposite in real life, because in real life the hardest thing is actually getting people together, because love is something that's really rare and very hard to find.
And very hard to find. And that's why we've been on this journey with these two characters for some time, and it was just a really nice moment. But then, typical Abbott Elementary style, the tone shifts very quickly. We'll get, I mean, Janelle James, I don't think there's anyone funnier on TV right now than her. Every time, I usually watch the show with my son, he's 14, and we will just crack each other up every time she's on the screen. So we get that kind of laughter. Then we get those little furtive glances that Gregory gives the camera when something's happening. And then, of course, we get the beautiful storyline that we get with these amazing teachers who love each other. How do you juggle the tone of this show and to make sure that you're getting it right, so that you're not overdoing one or overdoing the other?
Well, I mean, at first and foremost, we are a comedy. So we're certainly going for the laughs, but that's not really my focus, because I think if we're all doing our jobs well, the comedy is going to ring through. To me, it's the story that I'm relying on, and how that story has put those characters in those situations, and how it makes them all feel, how we develop those characters and how they all feel. Janelle James is hysterical, but she comes at it just with this confidence and this exuberance that just is so fun to watch. And you know, the things that she's concerned about in her character and her life are so much different than the other characters. And having this overtly comedic character that's supposed to be leading them and helping them is a really fun place to play when she's not helping them at all, or very, very little, or doing it in a way that only Ava could do. I'm not sure that I answered your question there, but
yeah, no, I think it does. And it brings me to this question, because I remember that you've said in the past that on day one, you all felt like something was quite special about the show. And we felt that too as the audience. This became a hit very quickly. It was a hit at the Emmys, and everyone seems to really love it. I'm wondering how that energy has evolved or changed over the years now that the show is in its 4th season.
You know, it's funny. I think when day one of that show, it felt so right, and everybody felt so well drawn. And I have to hand it to the writers, is they all feel so drawn. Nothing is going to come out of Ava's mouth that Jacob would ever say. You know, nothing is going to come out of Shirley Ralph's mouth that Quinta Brunson's going to say. So they're all uniquely and distinctly drawn. And when I'm reading the script, I don't need to read whose line it is. I know it because it's just true to the character. And that's something we've been really mindful of, is making sure that our characters are ringing true as themselves. And in doing so, we've created all these characters that really bounce off each other in a really interesting way. You know, it's really fun to work out that geometry and figure out who's going to play off who or who's going to bump up against another character. So it's been really fun. Day one of that show, it just felt right. It felt like we cast the right people. And there's a story I'd like to tell, that on day one of the pilot, there was a scene where Janine was supposed to be getting the kids to quiet down. And we're all on set, and this is during COVID, and the kids hadn't been in school. Some of these kids had never been in school like that. Certainly, most of them had never been on a film set. And we're there, and it's like, okay, quiet, please, quiet, everybody, kids, quiet. Janine's trying to quiet the kids down. I'm trying to quiet the kids down. The ADs are trying to kids, quiet the kids down. And Shirley Ralph comes in and says, "Good morning, class. I am your teacher. My name is Miss Barbara." And all the kids are like, they were completely quiet. I looked at Quint, I'm like, we did some really good casting. We're going to be fine. And it was art following, it was really cool. Really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think you did a very good rendition as well, because I could just imagine. Wow. Randall, thank you for your time, and congratulations on some beautiful work on the show. I really love it.
Thank you so much.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby. I'm so delighted to be joined by some of the best directors working on TV today on some amazing shows. I've got Alex Graves, Anna Foerster, Craig Brewer, and Randall Einhorn. Welcome, everybody. Before we even get into some exciting questioning about your work, I'm curious to know, what is a director's worst nightmare? What keeps you up at night when you're in the thick of production? Who'd like to go first? I'm kind of looking at you, Alex, because I feel like you may have a nice little tidbit for us.
I think my biggest fear is you're always orchestrating. You know, you've got all these different elements, like Anna was talking about earlier with her work, and it's always you're on set and you need somewhere between 4 and 30 of them to be in sync in the lens in that moment. And it's the anxiety that that's not going to happen every day. So that's my silly answer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with
Wow.
what you're saying. There is like the fear of the shit hits the fan is actually constant. I mean, I think you live and sleep with. I don't think you ever go to bed and think, oh, tomorrow will be a perfect day. Everything will be working out perfectly because we planned it so nice and everything is in order and it will be just a swell day. In a way, that never happens.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I always think that it's kind of like fear of flying. Like I feel like once I'm in the air, I'm okay. It's really just kind of like the anticipation of the engines whining and walking onto the plane where my anxiety goes up maybe a little bit. But I would say the same for me. You know, everything I believe it works even when everything falls apart when you're doing it. But there's something about something in your brain the night before that's saying, you know, you really have no control. Like that one element that you have no control over is not going to be there for you. And
yeah.
I remember one time my producers assured me that they were going to move an entire set from one place to another place, and I would film there. But they only brought one wall because they thought I was just needing to go into the trees. And so I just have this image of all the carts of all the crew members, hundreds of them, coming down the hill with the sun setting, rising behind them, and me just thinking to myself, like, let's just take this disaster of a moment right now and enjoy
Right.
what it is. But in a minute, we're going to figure something out and we're going to move forward. But it's really up until that plane gets in the air. I think that that's the nightmare.
and for me, I think it has to be not believing in it, not believe. And it's the same thing that an actor has, is they have a line they need to say, but they may not necessarily own that line. They may not believe in it yet. So for me, a lot of times it's, I got a plan. I've got a theory. It comes in as a theory, and then we try it, and it might just be a really bad idea. So for me, I need to believe in my plan. I need to believe in what I'm doing. And a lot of times, because I'm working with children who are like 4, 5, 6 years old, who have never acted before, I need, and sometimes I watch the auditions. I'm like, he's playing a shy kid, and that's great. But what if he's just a shy kid? And I've got a kid who can't really go other places. So for me, it's a little bit different because I'm just working with kids all the time. It's really fun.
I don't know. I thought the rule was no kids and animals, but here we are. Like, Randall,
Yeah.
you've got the kids. That's terrifying, I think. I always love asking this question because I feel it's the best way to get to know panelists. It's about what's that film or series that you watch over and over that you love, that's moved you, that's inspired you as an artist over the years. I could keep you here all day to tell you mine, but I'm really interested in yours. Who would like to tell us first? What's something that you love that you really recommend? Who'd like to go? Go for it, Alex.
Well, I mean, I watch movies all the time still, and it kind of keeps me straight and focused. And I'm a cliche in that I love Lawrence of Arabia. I love Blue by Kozlowski, and Raise the Red Lantern. And I'll look at those sometimes with the sound off. I'll just have them on while I'm doing homework and things. And I always find inspiration in those. And a lot of films, All the President's Men, I just watched the other night. And I'm still blown away by so many things in that film, and it just keeps me fresh and sharp, I think. I hope.
Wow.
I would say for me, that I think I'm kind of out of the phase in my life where I look at things for craft. I mean, and that's by no means that like, oh, I couldn't learn anything. But I think that now I'm in a phase in my life where I'm watching movies and television that moved me when I was younger. And I'm trying to go back and see what it was about them that grabbed hold of me.
Mhm.
Recently, I started watching the original Battlestar Galactica because I remember it having such a grip on me as a child. And watching it again, I have to say, like it began kind of like filling in just some not gaps in my life, but I began to figure me out a little bit better because I was like, I wonder if I was responding to kind of like that time I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark and I was watching Battlestar Galactica, and I was kind of interested in cultures that didn't exist or like narratives of mythology that people kind of put together in this television show. But if I'm going to be real, I was also really into the fact that Starbuck had a blonde and a brunette both fighting for him and both being fine with it. There was a sexiness to all of Battlestar Galactica, and I was like, okay, this is making a lot more sense for my early high school years. But I find that more and more I'm the other day I went looking for Benji. I love Lawrence of Arabia, and I just took my daughter to it, but I remember feeling a lump in my throat watching the
Mhm.
original Benji movie, and I went looking for this moment where his poodle friend got kicked because I wanted to see if I could still feel those emotions that I felt when I was younger, when suddenly movies or cinema or television had a grip on me, yet I had no knowledge of it other than just being
Mhm.
a viewer and experiencing it.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, working in comedy, I think that some of my North Stars that I look at are some of the great comedies from back in the day, like and also comedies that are actually about something, because it's easy just to have a laugh, but making something that's actually about something is really important to me, and that's I think we do that on Abbott Elementary. But I think about some things like All in the Family, you know, it was just honest, and it was really about something, and there were some challenging
Mhm.
topics that it's hard to talk about stuff like that if and it's hard to present stuff like that for viewers who aren't necessarily open to it or already that way inclined. So I think it's important to use comedy to open people's minds and also hopefully open their hearts.
Mhm.
I'm
And I,
joining. I'm joining the Lawrence of Arabia Club. It's funny.
Mm.
It's maybe the reason why I got into filmmaking. I don't know. Um, but I'm curious because you say when you're watching this and when you're rewatching this, I'm wondering when I'm working on a project and I'm like in development or something, I feel that I'm very fragile in terms of my creative process, and I actually do not watch other shows or other movies
Mhm.
while
Mhm.
I'm in the phase of whatever that is, creating a world or just like concentrating on a specific way of actors work or something like this. I'm curious about if I'm alone there.
No, that's a great point. Actually, it's very funny. I have a new script today, and so I have been thinking only about it, and I will now not be watching things. And I'll play music, but music with no lyrics
Hmm.
now, and I'll go through the script and let the script build its own movie, a new movie for me that I haven't seen before, a new something new. And because for me the challenge, especially with great writing like we have with Diplomat, is I want to film something and cut it together and have people react to it the way I reacted when I read it and was amazed by it. And that's and to your point, I don't go home and start watching, hey, I know a movie that's like this. It's like you let it come through you. And
Mm.
it's also something with age that's gotten better. I think when I was younger, I was more of the like, oh, I'm gonna go watch this, that, or the other. And now I'm like, okay, well, what can you draw from? What will what will get you, and then ultimately and always what will surprise you.
Hmm.
I would
wow.
say that I used to be a person that would make a playlist for the project that I was either writing or I was directing.
Mhm.
And I would say like, all right, I'm doing a movie about a guy who steals 18 wheelers. Let's watch Smokey and the Bandit. Let's watch Convoy. And you'd kind of consume everything about that. But what I've found that happened, especially on fight night, is sometimes I try to disconnect to that kind of material that you would think that you would watch for that, but I can't turn off the net that's kind of catching things. So right before we began shooting, Norman Jewison passed away.
Mm.
And I kind of just went on a Norman Jewison kick because I felt like, okay, well, here's a filmmaker that no one really talks about in those kind of like top 5 filmmakers, and yet he's made these remarkable films. And he passed away, and I don't know, there was something in me that felt like, well, no one's making as big of a deal as this, because I loved Fiddler on the Roof. It was a very important movie to me. I loved Moonstruck. But then I watched Thomas Crown Affair, and then I watched Jesus Christ Superstar. And I started seeing things that I had never quite seen before, even though I'd seen the movies before, because now I'm a filmmaker and I know about directing, and I'm knowing about like, oh, why are those lights in Jesus Christ Superstar have that special star filter on it? And oh, that's interesting. He does these zooms that are very deliberate in the Thomas Crown Affair. And suddenly now I'm realizing like I have the blueprint for my 70s show, or my series that takes place in the 70s, that is helping inform a style that I wasn't even looking for it in, of all people, Norman Jewison, and yet it really informed what I was going to be doing with Fight Night. And I felt, I don't know, I felt this, for lack of a better term, spiritual with it. I felt that here's the past of a director, and they put this work out there, and you take just little tiny nuggets of this offering that they've given the world, and it helps out some other filmmakers that might be just currently not lost, but definitely hungry and definitely searching.
Wow, that's deep. That's really interesting to me. And Craig, your viewpoint about watching something that you maybe would have watched as a younger person really resonates with me too, because you can go back and you can put yourself in your mindset as what you were. I watched Enemy Mine by Wolfgang Peterson. I was 8 years old, and I can see what I was really interested in back then as a child, and how it's affected me over my life. One final question before we let you go, because we are running out of time, and it's more about this mythical perfect take. Is there such a thing as knowing you've got the perfect or the best take you're going to get, or is that just a mythological pipe dream? Like you're never completely satisfied with the takes that you get. Randall, what about you?
I'm absolutely, once I have it, I'm done. Hands are in the air, I'm walking away. We're certain. No. Yeah, for me, I do believe there's a circle take that 9 times out of 10, it's the one that is in the show. And it kind of also can also, you have those, those scenes that are vital to the story, and that circle take can affect the rest of the film. So once you have, and I look at some of those essential scenes that are the building blocks to the story, I'm like, that's the take I'm going to use. So therefore this scene, and this scene need to be in such and such a way. And they're very informing, and they build the film out in a very beautiful way for me.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I totally agree with that the moment you feel this is like the perfect take and you can't touch it and whatever, but I have a different reaction to that. I'm saying, okay, so we have this perfect precious thing, and it's somewhere locked away in a golden cage right now. So now we have some freedom to try some shit. And I think it's something that also translates with the actors. The actors understand very quickly that this was an amazing take. Everybody is happy. The exhale of the operator, and the way you call cut, and the way everybody looks at each other, like you had something special. So now all pressure is off. And doing 2 or 3 takes after that, I have found some other type of magic that later in the cutting room you were actually quite happy to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is true. I'll actually have that perfect take sometimes, and I'm like, that was perfect. I love it. Oh my God, that's my circle. Everybody do whatever you want.
Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
you find something else there. You're right.
Yeah, the pressure
I-
the pressure is off. There is no more like everything goes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to say on set is that was perfect. Let's go again.
Mhm.
And what it means is we just got it and we're really happy, but we all have seen or learned before there might be more out there. And you go again and like you were talking about the end of the season finale of Diplomat that I did, like most of those shots were it was the only film that achieved what was meant to be achieved. There were no other takes. There were only those takes cut together in that order. But there's also what I call the tunnel take. And this is one of my favorite things. And it's the thing you hope will happen. And it rarely does. But you'll have a 5-page scene, very heavy scene for the actress to pull off. And you're wondering, are you going to do multiple takes and build it in the editing? And an actor will come in, and somewhere in there, it could be take 5, it could be take 10. You never know. They give the performance, the complete and total performance in a single take. And it's like you would almost not use any other take you'd shot because the way they surfed the whole scene was so perfect. And we call that a tunnel take. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
I've tried, and I don't know if this is because this last series and one of the first movies I made was with Samuel L. Jackson, who likes to do 2 takes, and that's about it. And there's something, and that's one more take than he'd like. I have found that there is something kind of special more and more of not treating what we do with the preciousness that I first started off with, because I feel that it's unfair to the magic that's happening on the project as a whole. And so I used to go searching for one more, or like I had it and I would do it again. And I've found that more and more I'm trying to say, like, no, I think that was a really good one, and I think that we're gonna move on. But when you talk about the perfect take, I have a different perspective on it. The perfect take is that moment that happens to us as directors where we're sitting there at the monitor, at the camera, and something truly unexpected happens with a performer, or the light that catches the tear, or something where we go, like, and we see something that we had nothing to do with, and that the writers had nothing to do with, and the actors had nothing to do with, but the combination of everything just creates a magic moment that you would not have been able to orchestrate. It was just that magical thing that I feel that it's almost the closest thing that comes to parenting, where you finally have a baby and you see the child look at you for the first time and smile. You're the first person that sees something truly unique and magical in something that you helped to create, and you had nothing to do with this magical moment. And I don't think we get many of those per project. You might get one, but man, when they happen, you can kind of count them on one hand.
That's great.
Wow,
That's so true.
that is incredible. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. On that note, thank you all so much for your time today. Congratulations on some really impressive work. And thank you again for all your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Nice
you.
to meet you
It's a
all.
pleasure.
Thanks to
Thank
meet
you
all.
too.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks.